There's a book by Kathy Lee Gifford, and in the book, she talks about the age of bliss. And she said that until children are 6, 7, 8 years old, they think they can do anything. They can be Superman, Batman, woman, they can president of the United States, whatever. But then everyone beats you down and holds you back. Not only your enemies, but your teachers, your friends, your parents say, no, you can't do that. You can never be president of the United States. And they scoff at you. Mark, I learned that I never got out of that age of bliss. They never beat me down. So I've always had big, audacious dreams and the confidence that I could do anything.
Hi, John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
As the founder of Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax Service, two of the largest tax preparation franchises in the US, 35 years plus in career, 5,400 franchises, having helped hundreds become millionaires. What does peak performance mean to you?
Be number one. There's no other solution for me. When I started Jackson Hewitt in 1982, I had 6 locations that I had bought from Mel Jackson, the widow, and H&R Block had 9,000. And so we set out from day one to add 8,995 offices. So being number one to me, is peak performance.
Now, everybody wants to be number one, right? But how do you actually go about it? What is your methodology to make sure you're rising always to the top?
There's a lot of things, but certainly one of the things, the most important thing is that to be number one, you have to have the best system. To have the best system, it needs to be constantly improving. Nothing that worked today is going to be working 10, 15, 20 years from now. So you have to constantly be recreating, reinventing, and stay ahead of the crowd.
How do you do that while you're also trying to run the business? Because a lot of entrepreneurs are overwhelmed with the minutiae of doing what they need to do to sustain themselves.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I brought in over 5,400. So I've seen, and I've done, my companies have done tens of millions of tax returns. So I've seen numerous entrepreneurs, and most of them just fight fires. And so my job as a CEO is to spend a third of my time thinking, planning, envisioning, and most people can't do that. Most people spend all their time putting out fires. So you have to make a conscious effort. And to do that, you have to be part of it. Part of being able to obtain that is you have to be a great delegator. And you can't be afraid to let people make mistakes and build your organization of people and understand that they're going to make mistakes, but you can't do everything or you won't get anywhere.
Let's go back to your origin story a little bit. You rose quickly from H&R Block to becoming the youngest regional director. What gave you the courage to walk away from all of that and then start something of your own?
I've always been cocky, and now it's confident. When I've always had the same confidence, but until you've proven, it's cocky. So when I was a kid, I thought I would make a few $1,000,000 and retire. And I was poor, but I always believed in it. And there's a book by Kathy Lee Gifford, and in the book, she talks about the age of bliss. And she said that until children are 6, 7, 8 years old, they think they can do anything. They can be Superman, Batman, woman, they can president of the United States, whatever. But then everyone beats you down and holds you back. Not only your enemies, but your teachers, your friends, your parents say, no, you can't do that. You can never be president of the United States. And they scoff at you. And in her book, she teaches people, you got to get back to the age of bliss. Mark, I learned that I never got out of that age of bliss. They never beat me down. So I've always had big, audacious dreams and the confidence that I could do anything, even though my goals are outrageous. Who would set that goal? We never got to 9,000, but we got to 6,000 and $1 billion company. So I'd rather shoot for 9,000 and hit 6,000 than shoot for 500 and hit 700.
Yeah. Talking about that age of bliss, I call that naivety. I say naivety is one of my superpowers. And I agree with you. Adulting is just a process of learning how to not to dream anymore. We become, quote unquote, too practical. And we no longer believe that we can do those things. Can you give me an example of something specific that the world was telling you cannot be done, you knew you could do it, and how you went about accomplishing it. How did you fight these demons that's coming at you, that's telling you can't do all this stuff?
Yeah, they generally involve long stories. But for example, as part of the process, back in the early 90s, H&R Block was in 600 Sears stores. Sears back in the 80s and 70s used to be a great company. And there was no such thing. Walmart, it was bigger than Walmart, bigger than Kmart, bigger than both of them put together. And then slowly Walmart began to take over. And we made a goal to be in Walmart. Now, Walmart had, even at the time, they had a couple thousand locations. And we were we had about 400 locations at Jackson Hewitt. And we said, we're going to be in Walmart. We set a 3-year goal to be in Walmart. And we set that in January of 1993. By the end of February, I was in Walmart headquarters making a pitch. And I also, at the same time, Walmart back then and Kmart was still a viable company back in 1993. So we actually set a goal to be in one of them within 3 years. And so I went to visit both of their headquarters, and that's how we started. And then Walmart had actually been testing with H&R Block, who still had 9,000 locations, and they were in about, H&R Block was in 50 Walmarts. And when we went in and met with them as a test, we went in and met, and they said, we don't even know if we like income tax, but if we did, they wouldn't let me in, but they said, if we like a industry, like if we like tax, we always like to have 2 vendors. So I felt good because there's only 2 national vendors. So it was going to be me. So I felt good about that, but bad, I thought Block might ruin the deal. And because they didn't care, they were already in Sears. They already had 8,400 storefronts. What did they care about Walmart? And Walmart wasn't a big thing back in wasn't 10% as good as it is now back in 1993. So I thought they might mess it up. But what happened was he didn't let me in, but Sam's Club called him and said, we'd like to test that. So we asked Block, and Block said, no, we don't want to go into Sam's Club. So we tested in Sam's Club. And then the second year, Block called him on, we did good enough in Sam's Club to earn their respect. And then the second year, in December, Block called him and said, we're not going to be able to take 50. They were going to go in 100 locations. And Block called in December, said, we're only going to be able to take 50. So Walmart called me up, and we scrambled and were able to get into those 50 locations. We were able to get into about a third of them. And so all of a sudden I had my foot in the door. I went through by way of Sam's Club to Walmart. When they called for help, I marshaled all my forces and got 16 or 17 locations up and running. And within 2 years, Jackson Hewitt had a monopoly in Walmart. And today they have 6,000 locations, and half of them are in Walmarts. So they're in almost 3,000 Walmarts. They do over $1 billion worth of business tax preparation in Walmart, starting with that little test in 1995 of 17 locations.
Wow. It's one thing to be able to execute a plan, to have the proper mindset and the routines and the discipline and the know-how. It's another thing to even know what to do. You didn't grow up in the age that these kids are growing up these days with internet and ChatGPT and AI. So when it comes to knowing what do I need to do to build this business, how did you go about that?
That's a good point. There's no class on how to exponentially build the business. There's no class in this country on how to be CEO. So I've been CEO since 1982. So this is my 43rd year of being a CEO. I call it the School of Hard Knocks. And I went through the School of Hard Knocks. I learned on the fly. I had to learn as I went. And again, much of that is adapting and improving. I had to commit to continual improvement. Now, improvement, you can't improve unless you change. So I'm a vessel of change. I've been changing every year for 43 years and improving and learning. And that commitment has propelled me into achieving great things and making the world a better place. As you said, I brought in over 5,400 franchisees, made over 1,000 millionaires. and they had hundreds of thousands of employees. So I've impacted tens of thousands of lives.
Absolutely. Given how you learned, adapted, changed, and learned again from it to implement something, compared to what is happening a lot these days, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, there are a lot of gurus with a lot of courses, right? And they have valuable information. And sometimes we get stuck in this information consumption paradigm, right? So if someone is listening to this and they're like, I want to be able to start a business, I want to be able to grow the business, I don't know what to do, what route would you tell them to go?
First of all, I have done webinars on how to grow exponentially. Here's the top 10 most important attributes in growing exponentially. But in the 90s, there's a lot of motivational speakers, Tony Robbins galore, right? And Tony Robbins, I believe, I love what he says. Everything he says is accurate. And there are some other Gary Vaynerchuk, and there's some other great advisors out there. But it reminds me of in the 90s, my staff, my sales staff, they begged me to pay for them to go see Zig Ziglar. Are you old enough to remember Zig Ziglar?
Oh, I remember Zig Ziglar.
Yeah. He was a 90s guy. He was the Tony Robbins of the 90s, only devoted to sales. And so I sent about 8 of them to Zig Ziglar, and not knowing what would happen. I'm not a real confident that anything would happen. They all came back that day. They're all motivated. They're all, we're going to conquer the world. Within 2 days, 3 of them weren't motivated anymore. Within 2 weeks, only 1 was still left. Within 2 months, it had no impact. So I'm afraid that people have bigger appetites for improvement than they can really live. And that commitment to change is so difficult. I don't know an intelligent person that I've ever met that said, I don't want to improve. I'm the cat's meow. I'm perfect. I don't want to improve. I don't need to improve. I don't know anyone that has ever said that. But that's how people act. What they say is, I want to improve, but don't ask me to change anything. And improvement requires change, and change is difficult. And there cannot be greatness. You cannot become great without constant disruption and difficulty. And I guess the best word is being uncomfortable. So if you want to be great, be prepared to be uncomfortable. You are going to face discomfort virtually every day.
You're obviously one of the pioneers of the franchising model. What do you think makes franchising such a powerful tool for wealth creation?
It's when it's done right. And by the way, I want to be careful, because franchising against common knowledge usually fails. Most franchisors fail. And you hear about all the great companies, the McDonald's and the Subways and the Jackson Hewitts and the loyalty brand. You hear about all the great success stories. You don't hear about all the failures. So 80% of the franchisors that have started in the 21st century have failed. You got to be careful. The system works, but not everyone follows the proper franchising system. But it's a beautiful system. It's a group of like-minded individuals that seek best practices in an industry. And the best franchisors, the successful franchisors, they listen to this group of people who are incredibly creative and driven. In my career, Mark, I've had thousands of employees, and yet only 2-3% of them act like owners. But in a franchise system, over 95% of my franchises act like owners. So I have a group of owners, and they outwork, they out-hustle, they out-create, they outthink. They are better than the company employee at the other store. And if you listen to your franchisees, if you learn from your franchisees, you're going to be driven towards the best model in the industry. And so that is the key, is that you have all this. Not only do you have the franchisor, whose job is to take all best practices, roll them up, and put them in a replicable plan, and then give them to every franchisee. So, for example, here's an example that if in the tax business, that as you can imagine, it's as you get close to April 15th, it gets very busy. So most tax companies are only up until 9 o'clock most nights. So when we approach April 15th, we change our hours to midnight. Now, because that we've learned that's best practice. And we're going to get a higher percentage of the market because some people can't get there by 9 o'clock, or it's too crowded and they can't finish by 9 o'clock. So you get more customers so we have best practices. And those are things that have been implemented, tried and true from our franchise space. And franchisees are a ownership model that work diligently and it doesn't cost me anything. They pay me to work for me. They pay me a royalty to work for me. I get the greatest people in the industry paying me to work for me. What could be better than that?
Yeah. Why do you think so many entrepreneurs overlook franchising as a business path?
I think that it's part of the inability to delegate. That in the same thing, when you deal with a franchise, it's not dealing with corporate employees. You can hire and fire a corporate employee, right? But with a franchise, you've got to go through all kinds of legal mumble jumble to bring in the franchise and to get rid of the franchise. It's a huge nuisance. Most managers make the mistake of treating their employees as subservient. I'm your boss, do what I say. Mm-hmm. So I believe that with my employees, that you're going to make me happy, but I got to make you happy too. So I'm very altruistic, and that's why we call it loyalty brands. I have dozens of people that have been with me 20 years or more because I'm so pro-employee, but I'm also pro-franchisee. And a franchisee, a mixed relationship. They're a customer, but they're a partner also. They're a quasi-employee, and they're a brains are. They're also thinking and innovating and creating alongside of you as a boss better than employees do, because employees tend to be intimidated or act like employees, and they go home at 5 o'clock and don't ask me to think about it anymore. When someone acts like an owner, they spend most of their woken time thinking about the business.
Yeah. You have helped thousands of franchisees becoming millionaires. What separates the top 5% of your franchises from the rest?
First of all, you have to listen. You have to follow the plan 98 or 99%. And out of all the franchises I brought in, no one has ever listened 100%. So you got to listen 98 or 99%. But then other things matter, right? You have to be driven. You have to be a self-starter. You have to treat your employees well. And you have to understand that everything starts, ends, and is the customer. Without the customer, you have no business. You don't need a franchisee, franchisor, board of directors, CEO, owner. If you don't have customers, you don't need anything. So they understand this concept and one of my favorite authors wrote this. He said in one of his books, Stan Phelps, he said, you never arrive at a meeting exactly on time. You're either early or late. If it's 6 o'clock, almost no one arrives exactly when the clock hits 6. It's early or late. And he said in the same manner, you never meet a customer's expectation. You either exceed their expectations or fail to meet it. And the best of the best understand that our job is to continually exceed customers' expectations. If you do that, you're unstoppable. If you don't, you're going to be stopped.
How do you train franchisees to think like owners instead of employees? Because even if it's not a franchise business, there are a lot of business owners who feel like employees in their own business. How do you train that mindset?
Yeah, I found that you can't train. You can teach them certain things. And one of the things that I've only been able to teach a minority of people of how to delegate. Most people just can never get it. They just can't delegate. I've never been able to get someone to change their attitude for permanently. I've done it for a week or a day or a month, but I've never got someone to change their attitude. So you have to start with an ownership mentality. I've never been able to, or rarely been able to, convert someone from an employee attitude. Just the fact, though, that when you have cash in and your time in, it's not just cash, right? When it's, I think the common definition of skin in the game means cash. Cash. I have cash in the game. But to me, that's not skin in the game. To me, skin in the game is I'm mentally all in. I have to go all in. I have to be committed, and I have to understand the 10 most important two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. And so you have to make that commitment. You have to go all in. And only then can you act like an owner, when you're all in.
How do you go about evaluating the right hire? Because as you said, a lot of these things are not trainable. So when you're looking at people to hire, what are you looking at?
Yeah, Tom Watson Sr., one of the founders of IBM, said it very well. He said, give me 100 great engineers or 100 people with great attitude. And I'll take the people with great attitude, because you can teach engineering. And so you can't teach attitude. And one of my biggest failures in my career, top 2 or 3 biggest failures, is keep trying to change people's attitude and keep failing and failing. So when we interview someone, we look to see if they have the positive attitude. And it's about forming a culture of positivity in your organization. And so it starts with hiring the people for attitude. But I saw Gary Vaynerchuk the other day on Facebook as I was trolling through, and he said, no, you can't leave it at hiring, because so many times you're wrong. And he said in his career, he's only right 50% of the time. People will trick you. They're at their best during their interview. They're better at interview than first dates. And he said, so what you have to understand is you have to be quick to fire and promote. You fire and promote quickly within a few months after you hire them, because you're going to be mistaken. And if you have people that have the wrong attitude, they're going to be toxic to your culture.
If I am listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, I want to try getting into becoming a franchise owner, what are some things that a person should evaluate when they're thinking about what franchise to become an owner of?
It's beyond simple. First of all, you have to decide whether you like the industry. One of my industries is mobile pet grooming. And do you like pets? And another is tax and accounting. Do you like sitting at it and do you like taxes and accounting? But so first of all, you have to have kind of an affinity for the business. But at the end of the day, you evaluate a franchisor based on this principle. A great franchisor understands the only way to greatness is happy, successful franchisees. And not just happy, they got to be successful. They have to have, because I've seen unsuccessful, happy franchises for a while. And so you have to evaluate the attitude of the franchises that are already in the system. Are they happy and successful? If they are, you can't stop growing. If they're not, you can't grow. So it comes down to the right industry, and are the franchisees happy, and good return on investment for their time and money.
How do you go about ensuring operational consistency across locations? It's hard enough to get people to do what you want to do in one location. How do you do it all across?
It's incredibly difficult and incredibly important. I had 6,000 offices at Jackson Hewitt and 4,000 offices at Liberty. And whoever offers the worst service is going to determine the quality of our brand. We're going to be not evaluated by the best performer, but by the worst performers. So it's important to the franchise base, that we police the system. So we do one thing that no one else does. And we call customers and say, how did Mark do for you? And was the fee fair? So we have about a 3-minute call and say, how can we improve? And no one does that today. They'll send them emails, they'll send them texts, they'll give a postcard to fill out, but no one is calling customers. And so it's state of the art. Our customers love to be called. They love to be asked. And so we get a higher retention. And one of the things we do is we ask for referrals when we call. But what we've learned is that in most of our industries, our frontline people aren't good at asking for referrals. Our dog groomers do a good job asking the owner for a referral. Our tax preparer, they're accounting types. They're not outward, typically not salesmen, go around people that, yeah, do you know it? Do you have any friends that might be interested? So we get more referrals than we, not only do we police the system, and we get more referrals and more retention because our customers like it. But Mark, it doesn't matter if you're a franchisee. If I think you're doing a good job or you think you're doing a good job, it only matters if the customer thinks you're doing a good job. So we check with our customers. Not every customer. You don't have to call every customer, but you have to do a reasonable sampling of every location.
What's your personal daily routine or mental model for performance? Because you've been doing this for a very long time and not only sustaining it, getting better every year.
I don't think I have a personal routine. So I don't have it. There's no 2 days are alike. But one thing is, I wouldn't call it a routine, but I'm very jealous about my time. And if you send me an email, not going to say, write, even type yes or no. I'm going to type Y or N. And I'm not going to, and if you ask me a question that 6 other people in my company know the answer to, I'm not even going to answer you. Because if you say, how do I get a hold of so and 7 other people or 70 other people in my company know that. I'm not going to waste time. I'm not going to teach you. I'm not going to enable you to be a bad delegate like you want me to be. I'm not going to ask someone who knows better. Here's another example. Let's say Joe sends me an email and I forward it to you. You get it and with an attachment, and there's no attachment. So you send me a note and say, there's no attachment. I ignore you because go ask Joe. Joe sent it to me. So Joe has the attachment too. So don't waste my time. So I'm incredibly time sensitive. And I don't do things that I'm not good at. I don't cook. I don't clean. I don't mow the lawn. I don't repair my house. I don't do things that I'm not good at. I've created $2 billion worth of companies, and my time's worth thousands of dollars an hour. And if I can pay someone $20, $30, $40 an hour to do it, I don't do it. And that gives me free time to, first of all, to rest up so I can focus when I'm focusing, and also to think and plan and envision. And it's funny, in my whole career, I'm in management, I started in management in 1971 at H&R Block, right? If you can imagine, 44 years ago, I was managing 10 offices. So I've been in management forever. But people say to me, I said, they won't contact me because I'm so busy, they don't want to bother me. I say, I'm not busy because I won't be bothered. So I'm actually have more time than virtually everyone. And I've run tens of thousands of offices and hundreds of thousands of employees. And I have time for every day. I have time to help. I have 15 minutes there and 30 minutes there. Because I'm so jealous of protecting my time from wasting my time. And I know that I have to be the visionary for the organization.
Yeah. What does to whom much is given, much is required? What does that mean to you in practice?
Wow. That's one of our principles, is paying it forward. That's one of our top 10 principles. So I'm so incredibly blessed, right? When I talk about all the things I've achieved, it's not because John Hewitt, it's that we all started in equal talent, and we all started at the same talent level. And John Hewitt exceeded everyone else. I've been given more talent than most people. I'm blessed. And 98% or 95% of people retire. And God bless them. I don't begrudge anyone. But I'm almost 76 years old, and I'm at the pinnacle of my knowledge and experience. And I can't imagine going and wasting my time sitting on a beach when I have so much to give everyone and to help. I'm here to give back and change the world, to make it a better place. I've been given gifts, and God doesn't want me to go sit and waste away and travel the world and have fun. And but my fun is helping people. I'd much rather be helping people than visiting the Grand Canyon or the pyramids or the Great Wall of China. My fun is changing lives. There's nothing more rewarding than improving people's lives. Our mission statement, I love our mission statement. This is my third mission statement. It's the best one. Having fun, improving lives. On Monday morning, if you're not looking forward to going to work, you're going to the wrong place. If you're living a thank God it's Friday life, that's a wrong life. With me, it's thank God it's Monday.
Yeah. There's so much talk about living a balanced life. Do you really think for an entrepreneur, like a balanced life is actually possible or something that we'd be achieving for?
I don't think, a balanced life is different in the eye of the beholder. Your balanced life isn't my balanced life. And there's no definition of balanced life, right? How much personal time, how much relaxation time, how much sleep, how much exercise. There's no such thing as a truly balanced life. Yeah, I think that you're given resources and talents, and your goal should be to be the best that you can be. And we're all given different skills. And so success isn't by heights achieved, it's by challenges overcome. I've never seen a person that skated through life that didn't have adversity. And so you are going to face adversity. And that's why the most important attribute to success is perseverance, because we're all going to get knocked down. So we're not going to have balanced life. Some of us are going to get COVID, and some of us aren't. Some of us are going to get broken legs, and who knows what we're going to get. Stuff happens. And so a balanced life is, to me, a myth.
Tell us a little bit about loyalty brands. What makes it different?
A couple of things. Number one is our experience. As I said, I have 24 people that have been with me 20 years or more. My Chief Marketing Officer has been with me since 1987, 38 years. My CFO, 1989, 36 years. Head of Franchise Development, 1992, 33 years. We have hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. We're the most experienced franchisors ever, not just today, but ever in the history of franchising. Franchising isn't that old. They didn't even have regulations on franchising until 1980. And so it's not that old. And so I was involved in it since 69. So I was involved when it was totally unregulated. We're way more experienced. But another thing that we have is I have developed 3 brands, H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, and Liberty. I was with H&R Block when they went from 3,000 to 9,000 locations, developed the United States. Then I started Jackson Hewitt, which went from 6 to 6,000. Then I started Liberty, that went to 0 to 4,000. So that's 19,000 locations. And so I have reputation throughout America. There, for every town of more than 30,000 people in the United States, there's an H&R Block and or a Jackson Hewitt and or a Liberty Zack. And when I go to that town, people have heard of John Hewitt. And so I have possible customers, I have possible employees, I have possible franchisees. So we have a competitive edge because I have gained so much respect over my 56 years, and respect in the fact that people know that my companies are going to have the proverbial Midas touch, that they grow and grow. And every company I've been with has grown and grown.
But why launch 8 brands now instead of just focusing on one again?
I kind of stumbled into that. And during my non-compete from Liberty Tax, when we sold Liberty Tax, I didn't have anywhere to go and anything to do. And so one of my attorneys that had been with me at both Jackson Hewitt and Liberty, we were out for drinks one night, and he said, "Why don't you get into another industry?" And so I stumbled into that. So we focus on 3 different industries. One is construction, led by our roofing and siding. Secondly is tax. I just completed my 56 tax season, tax, accounting, and advisory. But third, and the fastest growing, and one of the most exciting industries in the last 5 years, is pets. And our mobile grooming, Zoom and Grooming, not only we're already number 1 in all of mobile grooming in 3 years, we're out of over 100 pet franchises, we're number 1 fastest growing. And the pet industry there's two industries in franchising that are growing the most. One is senior care and the other is pets. And we're number one in pet growth. And we're adding other businesses like in pet, like a storefront grooming, picking up poop. We're going to have a hiking franchise soon, and we're expanding into the pet industry. But you're right, focus is important. And now at my age, within 5 or 6 years, I'll just focus on one industry again. I'll sell off the others and focus on one.
You've done so much, you've accomplished so much. What is the legacy that you're trying to build with Loyalty Brands?
Pay it forward. Just the concept of I've made the world a better place. I've over 1,000 millionaires and probably 5 times that many that are worth $400, $500, $600,000 in careers and so forth. And now they're disciples that can pay it forward and create more. And that's the thing that I want to be known for is the number of lives I've improved.
For those who are listening, when people think about buying into a franchise, one of the obvious scares is I don't have enough money, I have to take out a loan. Can you demystify that process a little bit?
To start a business, whether it's a franchise or non-franchise, you need money and ability. Our goal is to find the people with the ability. If you don't have enough money, then I'll figure out a way to get you involved, because it's a lot easier for me to raise money than find the right people. So when we identify franchise prospects, and we're not only fastest in pets, we're the top 1% fastest growing of every industry. When we identify the right person, we'll figure a way. Now, it might be the least we'll do for you is come work with us and prove yourself for a year, and then I'll finance you. I'll finance you myself if you prove yourself. So we're looking for the right people. It's not about money. We can get money a lot easier than people.
Obviously, you're in a stage in life right now where you're giving back, where you're helping people not just make money, but also shape their lives with the wisdom you're sharing. What was the best advice that you ever received?
I would have to say that my dad, when I was with H&R Block, I was all happy. I was a regional director, youngest regional director in the country, loving life, 30 years old. And my dad bought one of the first Apple computers. And there weren't even 250,000 in the country. He ordered by mail. There was no such thing as an Apple store for decades. And he bought one of the first computers, and he was CFO of a public company. And we would talk about my business because we were both business people, and that's how we regained. I was like a prodigal son, so came back to my dad, and we bonded through business. And he said, "Let's computerize tax." And there's no such thing as an internet, or my cell phone has like 1,000,000 times as much capability as the mainframe that was running his public company in 1978, right? And this tablet does. So he was a visionary. He said, one day computers are going to open our garage door and turn our oven and run our cars. When I started at Block, not only didn't they have computers, they didn't have calculators. I had to pull the handle of an answer machine. So my dad was a visionary, and he said, let's computerize taxes. We built the first tax software for an Apple computer. We expanded that into Jackson Hewitt, which became $1 billion company. But yeah, I have to give the credit for my dad had to drag me kicking and screaming out of H&R Block because I was so happy and having such a good time.
As you look back at your illustrious career and achievements, was there a leadership lesson that you look back at now and you're like, yeah, that's a really important lesson I learned, but at the time you were very upset about it?
Wow. Every day is a learning experience. So I can tell you that if you're to be really great, you have to embrace criticism. And as a franchisor, especially more than with employees, are reluctant to criticize the boss because they can get into trouble. But franchisees they have no problem, and they complain about everything and anything. One time we had a franchisee who on April 15th, he had a call from the television station that we're coming to your office and we'd like to do an interview. And he called corporate headquarters and he couldn't get a hold of anyone. So he was left out to dry. So I got this nasty, mean email from him about how we let him down. And he was the worst, could have been the worst franchise we ever had. He was so horrible. He didn't do anything right. But he had a great point, and we learned from that. And so from then on, because every newspaper, radio, television station is going to an article or a show on taxes during the taxes. Every radio station, TV station, newspaper is going to run something about taxes during the taxes. And so it said, so from then on in basic training, we had a 15-minute segment on how to handle the media. We put it in our operating manual on how to handle and online that you could go to this and get and instantly find out how on our intranet on how to handle the media. So even from the worst franchise I've almost had out of my over 5,000, we learned. And you have to embrace that criticism and be prepared to adjust. Good ideas can come from the worst franchise.
Is there a war story you would like to share, like a moment where things got really hard and perhaps even pushed you momentarily into a direction where you're like, this is it, I'm done?
I've never been to the point I was done. They got to kill me to stop me. So yeah, there's some very black periods. In 1995, in 56 tax seasons, the IRS really screwed the industry badly in one season. And it would take me the half hour to explain that, of what happened. But they essentially, to make a long story short, they held up refunds of 30% of our customers and said, we're going to check these returns. We're going to put them over here and check them. And we're not going to issue the refund for 10 weeks. It's going to take us 10 weeks. And so customers who are used to getting their refund in a day or two or three, they were going to get their refunds for 10 weeks. And the IRS didn't tell anyone. They didn't tell their own people. They screwed up. It was a software glitch where they made a mistake, a rounding error, or a decimal point. So they, instead of holding up 3%, they held up 30%. And it was a disaster. It was incredibly, all the ramifications were horrible. But it was Friday, I think it was February 6th of 1995. And it was horrible. And I remember coming into a meeting with my team, and my CFO, was still with me, said, you got to lighten up. He said, we look at you for confidence and attitude. You're depressing us. So it was a very black period. There was no quit. There was never going to be a quitting, but there have been some black periods that I faced in my career for sure.
So when you got that feedback from the CFO, what did you do to get out of that state of mind?
It didn't take me long. It didn't take me long because I realized that if God said to me, I will kill your son or cause this to happen, with IRS to screw up, what would I pick? Well, IRS screws up. If he said, I'm going to make your wife a paraplegic, or the IRS is going to screw up. He said, if I'm going to make you blind, what would you pick? It's not. There's lots of worse stuff that could happen. And I always started from the vantage point. One of the many blessings that I've had is from a very young age. I had gratitude that I'm healthy. And I try to teach my own children, and I have 6 children, and they don't get it. To be healthy and alive and in the United States, you're in the top 2% of all the people in the world. Be grateful. Start and end with gratefulness. So I tell people I wake up happy. I go to sleep happy. Virtually every minute in between, I'm aggravated with the problems of the day or problems that I'm facing for the future. But I never have a bad day.
If your grandchildren were listening to this podcast, what is one thing you want to tell them that has already not been discussed?
My general philosophy in life is find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. And what I do for my children, and what I try to do for my children, now I have 5 great-grandchildren. I didn't feel old until I became a great-grandfather, because I remember I only had one set of great-grandparents when I was a child, and they were old. So now I have 5 great-grandchildren. So my goal with my children is teach them about God and set a great example. So they will be watching this podcast someday. this very podcast. They'll be looking at this podcast, and that's my grandfather's. And they will see it. But find something you love to do. Work hard, persevere. Remember, it's thank God it's Monday, not thank God it's Friday.
Yeah. John, there is something to be said about a man who has seemingly accomplished it all, but is still out running businesses, starting businesses, and also giving back through podcasts like this. So it's been nothing but an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. And I really hope to talk to you soon again.
Mark, thank you. It was my pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
You too.